1960 what? 1960 who? 19. Hey, the Motor City is burning. That ain't right. 1960 what? 1960 who? 1960 what? 1960 who? 19. Hey, the Motor City is burning, y'all. That ain't right. There was a man, voice of a people, standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Shots rang out. Yes, it was a gun. He was the only one to fall down, y'all. That ain't right. Then his people scream, ain't no need for sunlight, ain't no need for moonlight, ain't no need for street light, 'cause it's burning real bright. Some folks say we gon' fight, 'cause this here thing just ain't right. 1960 what? 1960 who? 1960 what? 1960 who? 19. Hey, the Motor City is burning, y'all. Store with 3 pieces of black licorice in his hand, y'all. Mr. Policeman thought it was a gun, thought he was the one, shot him down, y'all. That ain't right. Then his mama screamed, ain't no need for sunlight, ain't no need for moonlight, ain't no need for street lights, 'cause it's burning real bright. Some folks say we gon' fight, 'cause this here thing just ain't right. 1960 what? 1960 who? 1960 what? 1960 who? 19. Hey, the Motor City is burning. Great God Almighty is burning. You can't put out the fire 'cause it's burning. Hey, 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 hey.
Please take your seats. Please take your seats so you can be served lunch. We're going to begin our program in about 10 minutes.
Excuse me, can Lori Villarosa please raise your hand? Okay. Lori Villarosa, please identify yourself. She's not here. Okay, thank you.
1960 who, 1960 what? 1960 who, 1960 what? 1960 who, 1960 what? 1960 who, 1960 what? 1960 who, 19. Hey, the Motor City is burning, y'all. That ain't right. 1960 what? 1960 who? 1960 what? 1960 who? 19. Hey, the Motor City is burning, y'all. That ain't right. There was a man, voice of a people, standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Shots rang out. Yes, it was a gun. He was the only one to fall down, y'all. That ain't right. Then his people scream, ain't no need for sunlight, ain't no need for moonlight, ain't no need for street lights, 'cause it's burning real bright. Some folks say we gon' fight, 'cause this here thing just ain't right. 1960 what? 1960 who? 1960 what? 1960 who? 19. Hey, the Motor City's burning. The Motor City is burning. Great God Almighty is burning. Great God Almighty is burning. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, 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 it's burning. Can't you see that it's burning? Hey, hey. 1960 what? 1960 who? 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 1960 what? That ain't right. That ain't right. That ain't right. That ain't right.
lies and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Come on, talk to me so you can see what's going on. Yeah, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. I'll tell you what's going on. Right on, right on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Quiet down just for 1 second. I just have a few announcements to make, folks. Need just a few minutes of quiet just so I can get through with some of these announcements. Thank you. So first of all, welcome back. I'm wondering, how were the salon sessions so far? I've heard a lot of great things. How were they? We're good? So I've been following some of the conversation on Twitter, and I'm still impressed with the level of engagement and excitement and energy. So we have a few questions here. What would be possible if all the orgs that receive money from MBK donate 10% to work led by women of color? Good question. Excellent. And this is Rachel speaking the language of the WFC Colorado. Don't forget the gender lens. And so that's what we wanted to create in this big space over the course of this week, to get folks talking and engaged together in the physical form, but also on social media and Twitter. Here's another, this one I think was probably one of my favorites from the Leaders of the New School Salon. Either pass the baton or we taking it. Now that's the kind of energy that folks all across the country are exhibiting. Either pass the baton or we're taking it. One more from Ricky Hurtado. Important reason to work with leaders of the new school. People closest to the problem are closest to the solution. So we want to keep that level of engagement going, and we need you to do a few things. I keep pushing the app and pushing social media, but go to the app right now and take this opportunity to rate the sessions you were in. This is the best way for us to find out what's working, what isn't, and what you guys are most responsive to. So if you can take a few minutes when you get a chance to go to the app and again, rate the sessions you were in. Also, the time period we allotted for you guys to vote on the ideas for these pop-up sessions, that is over. But anytime between now and 6 p.m., we want you to take another second to cast your vote to figure out which sessions now we're actually going to hold. And so through the app, once we tally the votes, we'll let you know which sessions were chosen and which rooms they'll be. And again, through the app, they'll send you an instant message letting you know exactly what the details are. And so have any of you also taken the time to go check out the Under Construction exhibit? It's this great exhibit. If you haven't yet, check it out right outside our doors or go to the 4th floor to get a full scope of what this project is about. It's actually a really amazing project that has had so much meaningful change already in the lives of the young people who have taken part. It's a combination of efforts between Frontline Solutions, who's partnered with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to show stories of transformation in the lives of young men of color and the nonprofit experts they've been working with. And so there's just all these great stories about transformation on a personal level and the connection between community. It's actually something to behold and something actually pretty amazing. And so in just a few minutes, we're going to show a profile on Denim, which stands for Developing and Empowering New Images of Men. Denim is a Washington, D.C.-based organization that seeks to engage, educate, and empower young black men through healthy relationship building, sexual education initiatives, and social events. We hope you enjoy this video.
There are several things that are unique to the LGBT community here in DC. I think one is this was a community, especially amongst Black gay men, that was hit very hard by the HIV epidemic in the 80s and the 90s. The whole swaths of Black gay men died off in their prime. There's also a sense of community that brought folks together behind this very scary epidemic. And so a lot of that infrastructure still exists today.
We have a whole bunch of young Black guys that are coming to the drop-in center to get services, but we have very limited resources to really support their needs.
I moved up here in 2006, and I remember walking around. I could see people in all colors, gay men, gay women. They were proud to be walking around with their boyfriends and girlfriends. I grew up in Southern Virginia, and it just wasn't there.
There are a few unique challenges for young Black gay men here in DC. One of them being joblessness. We have a lot of youth who come through the center who experience a lack of readiness for a job. Homelessness, because of the dynamics between relationships with their family and home, they don't really have a place to go. It's a lot of challenges. Those are the two immediate ones that we see on a day-to-day basis.
I think the need that hasn't been addressed in the community is that the HIV epidemic, we kind of look at it as, well, if we give enough condoms or if we put enough safe sex material out there, then the rates will go down. And that's just a flawed sense of thinking. Black gay men are dealing with a entire host of socioeconomic issues, of mental health issues, and so we've got to start treating Black gay men in this community as a whole person and as whole people, instead of just one aspect of our life.
Denim stands for Developing and Empowering New Images of Men. There are multiple agencies in the district that provide services for young gay individuals and older gay individuals. The individuals who were 18 to 29, they just felt like this was not a place for them. So we needed to build a bridge that really introduced them to adulthood, but also in a culture and environment that they can be a part of. So the center was really designed to make them more self-sufficient. The programs they created, the activities that they did, the community outreach that they did, and the testing all was focused around young adults.
What we wanted to do is provide a center that was appeasing for the many subcultures of Black gay life. So persons who are college educated, persons who are probably affiliated with Greek organizations, people who are gamers, the ballroom community, people who don't identify as gay, people who are openly gay, people who are transgendered. So really provide this organic experience where they all could come comfortably and receive information that was HIV preventative related, but then also be able to get resources.
Our expertise is really looking at that social and that supportive services. We do have mental health, so they're able to access mental health when it comes to a support system, when it comes to getting someone they can sit down and talk to about what are their stressors and what's going on with them. We do have those.
I think what attracts people to Denim is the fact that there's no other space that exists like this in the Washington, D.C. area.
I decided to create this program called Brother to Brother that really teaches that social emotional learning that's not taught in schools and allows them an outlet to discuss the issues that they deal with in their life and come up with positive conflict resolution. I met with Denim about creating this project, making it a program here, and they were all for it.
I would describe my journey as improvement.
The journey to my identity has been very, very long and very frustrating. What you see is someone that isn't on hormones, that doesn't take pills or do anything. It's my natural being. And so I had to embrace that. As a child growing up, people always mistook me for a girl no matter what I did.
It's been a really long journey, and I'm still in the process of really finding myself.
I'm not necessarily out there with my lifestyle. I don't really consider myself DL. I have grown to love myself and appreciate who I am and kind of just be comfortable.
I started coming to Denim. I had just moved to DC and I was still becoming a native because I attend Howard University, so I was still learning my way around. I've kind of been hooked ever since. I felt connected here because it gave me a family away from home.
I moved to DC 3 years ago. Somewhere along that point, I found out I was HIV positive, and finally getting to a position where I'm owning that and I'm able to really understand how my HIV has helped me.
I co-facilitate an HIV positive support group here in DC. It's actually the only
HIV positive support group for young black men who have sex with men between the ages of 18 and 29. And if you understand, it's hard to get young black men with HIV in the same room. Because DC's so small, I don't want to see you out. I don't want you to know what I have. And so the fact that we're able to draw those men, twice a month, it's a testament to who in the community and the fact that we are so transparent with our disease.
I didn't think my story had an effect on people until actually coming to Denim. I now see that it really touches others.
I always affirm them because I remember not being affirmed when I was younger.
Denim is in a position where people are coming and it's overwhelming. People are coming so much in the sense that we're now in the process of developing strategies to expand. This need to really, really engage younger black genuine, young black gays, really, really excited about getting their voice out and finding out what their narrative is and really, really giving a presence that's genuine.
Black gay men need this. Black gay men need a brotherhood. They need to know that there's somewhere where they can go and learn about their own culture, but then understand how they fit into the rest of the world and can find a home in love.
Wow, the audacity of seeing people as whole individuals to be respected and honored and cherished in their whole selves. I actually think we have two members of Denim in this audience, Travis Wise and Guy Anthony. Would you guys stand up? Are they in here? Let's clap it up. So to see a little more again of Denim's work in the exhibit in the project, you can see some outside these doors, or you can go to the 4th floor in Imperial 1 to take a bigger look at the project. Thank you very much.
Hush now, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination. Though you may find from time to time complications. And take the trip. Though there may be wet road ahead and you cannot slip, just move on up. For peace you'll find into the steeple of beautiful people where there's only one kind. So hush now, child, and don't cry. Understand you by and by. Move on up and keep on wishing. Remember your dream is your only scheme, so keep on pushing. Take nothing less than the supreme best. Do not obey rumors people say, but you can pass the test. Just move on up to a greater day. With just a little faith, if you put your mind to it, you can surely do it. Just move on up. Move on up. But move on up. Watch out, but just move on up. But move on up. Move on up.
Thank you very much, folks. Sorry to keep bothering you. I know it's been a long day, so you guys are hungry, so forgive us once again for interrupting your lunch. Could we get a little bit of quiet? We're about to start the second half of our presentation. So as you guys are finishing up your delicious chicken lunch, we want to give you an update on an emerging opportunity, a briefing on some national strategy alignment work, and a local example of what's working right here in New Orleans. So first, we'll hear from Daniel Serid, Director of Common Justice, about an emerging opportunity to access resources to redress the pain and suffering that Black men of color experience in their everyday lives. Then we will hear from Sarah Matthew from the Forum for Youth Investment, who will brief us on the efforts of a network of networks, a collection of national organizations that are trying to coordinate their support to boys and men of color. Lastly, we'll hear from Charles West, Director of the Mayor's Innovation Delivery Team, about a quick example about how the City of New Orleans has tried to coordinate across sectors through philanthropy, corporate, nonprofit service providers, advocates, and organizers to support positive life outcomes for Black men of color in New Orleans. To get us started, I want to call up Danielle to the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, you all. My name is Danielle Serid, and I direct Common Justice, which is an alternative to incarceration and victim service program for serious and violent felonies based in Brooklyn, New York. And I want to talk today about a $1.6 billion opportunity that I hope is of relevance to most people here. But before doing that, I want to take a moment to say something about why I, as a white woman, am up here on your stage. So the first thing is that we at Common Justice are very serious, and I am very serious about doing this work in a way that is answerable and accountable to Black leadership. And a lot of times that's a very complex thing to do, and sometimes it's as simple as when Marcus Littles tells you to stand on a stage, you stand there. The second thing is that in talking about the pain young men of color experience, We hear a lot in this country about the narratives young men of color internalize, that their pain is somehow less significant if it exists at all, that if they are hurt, they probably did something to deserve that they brought that pain on themselves, that the violence they experience is normal, and that all of their history affirms that. But usually that conversation stops with talking about the way young men of color internalize those messages themselves. I will not speak to that here. There are many people who are far more capable of speaking about that part. But what I do know is that it is not only young men of color who internalize those messages. All of us do, including white folks. And the story that Black lives are disposable is not a story that people of color invented. And so the work of uprooting that narrative and of replacing it with something true and humane is something I believe that will require the participation of white people, because we sure as heck have participated in the creation of it. The last thing I'll say about why I'm here is that I know what it is like for my society to care about my pain. So when I was sexually assaulted in my teens, there were services for me everywhere. I never actually went to any of them, but the very fact that they existed communicated something to me. It communicated to me that my life mattered, that my pain was important, that what happened to me was wrong, that I would need to heal, that I deserved to heal, that I could heal, and that my society cared so much about what had been done to me that it would do what societies do when they care about something, which is that it would put resources behind that. So without my ever setting foot into any of those victim service spaces, that message became for me the foundation of an informal healing process that I could access with the people I loved. It's my belief that as a society, we have sent an equal and opposite message to young men of color. The lack of services, the complete absence of any infrastructure to address the trauma and pain they experience, even though a young man of color is 10.5 times more likely than me to be robbed or assaulted, sends a message that that pain does not exist, that it does not matter, that their lives are not of importance, that they cannot heal, will not heal, do not deserve to heal. And so at Common Justice, we are in the business of trying to reverse and uproot that. We know that culturally responsive victim services, we don't say culturally, I don't think of culture as something you get competent at. It's not like the banjo. But when we think about culturally respectful, responsive, and rooted victim services, we know it's going to be much more complicated than sort of taking out the Madonna quote and putting in a Tupac quote and putting a picture of Malcolm and Martin on the wall and getting our culturally competent certificate. We know that for each of us, how we heal is deeply rooted in who we are and where we're from. And so when I say I know what it's like for my culture to tend to my pain, I also know what it's like for my culture to tend to my pain in a way that is reflective of and responsive to my culture, to my experience. And so when we say as a nation that we don't know what to do, and particularly when people in positions of power and leadership say we do not know what to do to address this extraordinary pain, it's my belief that we're lying, because we do it for me. And so we have the ability as a country, when we take someone's pain seriously, to rise to that challenge and meet it. The thing I'm here to share with you today is a fraction of Common Justice's work. We run a national learning collaborative for people working with young men of color harmed by crime. So whether you're in a GED program or a work program or a school setting, if you are tending to the pain young men of color experience, we want you included in this network. But very quickly in establishing this network, we understand that one of the things people need most to do the work is the resources to do it. So in this past fiscal year, in FY15, in the federal budget, the amount of money for victim services was increased from $745 million to $2.3 billion. That's billion with a B. That's a hard number for me to get my head around. It's a $1.6 billion increase. And so what we're doing at Common Justice now is coordinating a collaborative effort involving Equal Justice USA and the Californians for Safety and Justice to try and ensure that as significant a portion of that funding as humanly possible reaches those most impacted by crime and violence, and particularly young men of color. So that effort for us involves identifying groups that are already doing this work who may not regard themselves as victim service providers. So that includes many people in this room and people you are connected to who you know you are the place people go when they are suffering, and you know you are not paid a penny out of the victim service funding. We want that to change. We're engaging the state level administrators who make decisions about this funding to try and increase their openness and awareness of the issues so that when they get strong applications, they will respond to those by funding them. We are providing technical assistance through Equal Justice USA to applicants so that the applications they submit are stronger and more competitive. We're engaging people in the mainstream victim service movement to try and ensure that they are allies rather than opponents of inviting more people to the table. And then we are working with the Californians for Safety and Justice to elevate the voices of survivors in this conversation so that for once we listen to the full range of victims' pain. We know that if we are able in this first year to direct 1% of the increase, so not even the total, that we're talking about $16 million of services. It's our aspiration in the second year, if we can command the resources to really power this advocacy effort, to direct 10% of that increase to services for young men of color harmed by crime. That's $160 million a year. I won't pretend the money is not cumbersome. It's federal money, it's state pass-through money, it has all sorts of limitations, but I think it also presents an enormous opportunity. We think about with $160 million a year, within the space of 5 years, we could become a country where when a young man of color is hurt, at least in a major city, the chances that he would have access to accessible, effective support to help him move through that pain could be extremely high. I don't know that America knows how to be that country. And I think about the same way those services that existed for me conveyed something to me about the value of my life. I think when we start to build those services, it starts to convey in a very concrete way, in a way that is about resources, that is about money, that is about the existence of what people need, that we value young men's pain, and that will challenge all of us to move into, to become a country that acknowledges the reality of that pain, the roots of that pain, if we are really brave, maybe even the history of that pain. And at the very least, $160 million divided among the folks in this room might help us get a little closer toward the goal. So we'll be having a conversation during one of the pop-up sessions tomorrow morning. If you're interested in learning how to get the money, if you're interested in being a partner in the advocacy around it to ensure it goes where it belongs, if you're interested in supporting the larger collective effort to drive these funds, and if you're interested in pushing us, holding us accountable, challenging us on the plans we have so far, please join us in the morning to talk further. Thank you. And with that, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce and bring up Sarah Matthew. Thanks.
So yesterday, if you guys were here for the opening plenary, we got to hear Angela Glover Blackwell speak, and she said something that was so appropriate. She said, the time is now. And it's so true, right? Like the air is a little bit different, and it may not necessarily resonate with us as much because I feel like all the people in this audience here have dedicated their lives personally, professionally to this work. And so for us, this is nothing new. We all agree, we all know that black and brown boys are important. Their lives matter, that they're beautiful, strong, talented leaders, but the world is finally catching up, right? There's all this momentum and excitement happening in the field right now. And it's not only happening in the boys and men of color field, it's happening across overlapping populations in other fields, like the Opportunity Youth Space, which describes the 5.6 million 16 to 24-year-olds who are not working or not in school. There's also increased national attention around justice-involved youth or transitioning aged youth. And so what we all know is that, unfortunately, boys and men of color disproportionately makes up all those groups, right? So we're excited on one hand that there's all this traction happening with this work. There's new excitement and huge momentum happening. But typically what happens to the people who are late to the party, their knee-jerk reaction is to start a new initiative, right? To go off and create something new to address the issues. And so I typically cringe because I'm like, no, please don't do that, right? And I think a lot of you guys have the same sentiments in your eyes. You roll your eyes because you're like, no, please don't start something new. There's a lot of great stuff happening. We talked about a lot of that great stuff this morning. A lot of you got to go on the site visits and see some of that great stuff here in NOLA. So with this momentum happening across the fields, several national folks, initiatives, and foundations came together and said, you know what, if we really want to be serious about maintaining this momentum, to not only ride out this wave, but actually create sustainability, we got to do a better job of aligning across national initiatives. So a group formed called the Opportunity Youth, it's an ugly name, right? Opportunity Youth and Boys and Men of Color Alignment Strategy Group. It's a mouthful to say and not a very sexy name, but really this group came together. It's made up of so many national initiatives like Cities United, Campaign for Black Male Achievements, Aspen Institute Center for Native American Youth, Aspen's Institute for Forum Community and Forum Solutions, Aspen Forum for Community Solutions, and it's co-chaired by Antoinette Malvo from Casey Family Programs, as many of you might know her, and also co-chaired by Steve Patrick from Aspen Forum for Community Solutions. And really what this group is trying to do is not create a brand new entity, not brand a whole new initiative, but really work behind the scenes to figure out how all of these national initiatives can come together and coordinate strategies, figure out ways to better align, and really ultimately leverage the influx of resources that are coming into this space. And the most simple definition of what the work that the group is trying to achieve is really to make the lives of community leaders on the ground less of a headache. So we know as national initiatives, we want to be a little bit more responsible about how we're coming into communities. And a lot of times you come in with good intentions, right? We want to come and provide the TA resources, provide the support, but there's a lot of good stuff already happening on the ground. And so if we want to be more intentional about how we come into communities and we want to be more thoughtful and be more responsible, there's some things that we have to do at the national level, kind of some self-reflection. So really what the group decided to do was they started meeting, created some initial mapping of both the fields, Opportunity Youth space and the Boys and Men of Color space. But one of the critical things that they felt was most important was to hear from local initiative leaders in cities with multiple initiatives and really get feedback from them to say, you know what, how are we making you guys feel? What are the crazy things that we're doing that are inefficient, that may make sense at the national level, but are really giving you a headache on the ground? And so out of those interviews and conversations, the Forum for Youth Investment went to a couple of convenings similar to this, the Cities United convening and the Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund convening, and conducted interviews and spoke with some local initiative leaders who were from cities that had at least 3 national initiatives. So these are cities that have signed up to be an MBK city. These are cities who have a Cities United initiative, perhaps have an Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund. And out of those conversations, we developed some themes and recommendations to take back to the group. Really, some of them are super simple, like, can you guys coordinate and talk amongst yourselves and coordinate convenings? Because, for example, I've talked to so many people who are here today, and this is the 3rd time they're in NOLA just this year for a convening. Can you do something simple as that? So maybe some deeper alignment across initiatives to figure out how we can plug into the gaps and provide technical assistance where one initiative may be failing, another initiative can step in. And so I'm not gonna read all these recommendations to you guys because they're pretty lengthy, but I will do a high-level overview of the 7 themes that came out of those conversations. And the first was just to recognize that there may already be some local efforts to align. The theme 2 that came out of this was align before the fact rather than after the fact. We had people who tell us, I'm here for the Cities United convening today and have to be back in 2 weeks for the DOJ National Forum on Youth Violence Prevention in Philadelphia again. That's not really efficient. Doesn't make sense. Theme 3, collect and provide key information to enable better alignment. Is there a way that these national initiatives, foundations, before they come into our communities, can they themselves figure out what areas they're fitting into this space? Can they provide us some crosswalking? Can they see where their goals overlap, where the technical assistance overlaps, or maybe where there's some holes in the field? Importantly, too, can these national initiatives work together to provide disaggregated local data on these populations for all communities to spark discussion and comparison? Theme 4, which was really important, provide deeper support. This is a great quote, 2 things. Implementation and sustainability we're left to do on our own and by ourselves, and that is what we most need. So that's kind of scary, and I'm really glad that the themes for this conference this year has implementation and has sustainability. So theme 5, allow flexibility for local adaptation. We want funders to know 2 initiatives won't come into every city looking the exact same. Allow for that flexibility. Theme 6, increase networking opportunities within and across initiatives. Theme 7, alignment should not blur key distinction. And I think we've heard this over and over again from local leaders, this idea that there's important distinctions happening between initiatives. There's things happening in the opportunity space, and some people in the BMOC space feel like, no, we want you to call it out. We want you to give it its name, and that's important to us. And so as national foundations, as the national initiatives, really being thoughtful as we come into communities and appreciating those distinctions. And so I come here to say this group is not an exclusive group, but really an inclusive large tin of national initiatives, national foundations, all folks really interested in kind of creating a more efficient environment. So if you guys have seen these themes and recommendations and say, no, you guys need to go back to the drawing boards, start again. Or if you want to flag me down and say, you know, I really want to co-sign on some of those recommendations or some of those themes. And if you guys could prioritize this as a group, that would be really helpful to me. And so you guys can find me throughout the convening AGAL app, direct message me, tweet me, all of the above. But we really want to make sure that this is an inclusive and open opportunity to get feedback from everyone. Thank you. Oh, and this is a perfect segue for me to turn to Charles, who actually is going to give us a good synopsis of how this collaboration and alignment efforts are happening here in New Orleans. Charles?
Thank you. Good afternoon. First, welcome. Welcome to New Orleans. On behalf of Mayor Mitch Landrieu, I'm Charles West, Director of the Innovation Delivery Team in the City of New Orleans. And in that role, I work to coordinate a number of citywide initiatives. In particular, NOLA for Life, our effort to change the outcomes for boys and men of color in New Orleans, which in New Orleans very specifically means black men and boys, and a focus on reducing violence in our community. But that also means our citywide strategies to reduce local incarceration and also increase economic opportunities for disadvantaged job seekers. And so I have those 3 small things that I work on and try to integrate across them. And with that, I have many opportunities to look at national efforts, local funders, national funders, and all the other partners that are doing this work and try to braid it together to the greatest effect. Many organizations in New Orleans received funding after Katrina, in particular, larger amounts of funding to build their capacity to deliver services. But very little of that money really focused on coordination and ensuring that they were working together. And so in part because as the city we're broke and we don't have the money to build their capacity directly, we have instead tried to focus on coordination and ensuring that the service delivery between all these organizations, one, has the greatest impact possible, and that is focusing very specifically on the people that need it the most, but also that we work with them so that they are working together, collaborating, making the best use of all of their resources. So in 2012, in partnership with the Greater New Orleans Foundation, we were able to launch what's called the NOLA for Life Fund, which allowed us to receive private and philanthropic donations. And so a large private donation of $1 million that the city matched with about $250,000, we used to bring together 9 service organizations in the city that work with boys and men of color to talk about how we can improve service delivery. And so it was specifically not to say go off and serve 10 more, 20 more, 50 more young men, but instead to say, how do we actually work better together? And that was very important because these are people who often weren't at the same tables, either because they were some of the larger organizations that don't often work with the smaller grassroots organizations. They were some of the organizations who might not usually come together because of political reasons. They just don't like somebody because somebody talked about them bad, or whatever the case may be. There are just all these different reasons that people may not in the past have come together. And so we tried to put a specific effort on bringing together different voices all in the same room. And so some of those organizations are here today, Youth Empowerment Project, Liberty's Kitchen, or organizations like that came and they helped us build a continuum of service. And so they said, if you're really going to focus across the life stages, this is the kind of work that you need to do. This is the coordination that you need. We took that and we were able to get funding from Kellogg Foundation to specifically bolster our service delivery specifically for Black men and boys, recognizing some of the challenges that Danielle mentioned about these young men often being the victims themselves of violence and crime and needing specific supports that were tailored to that. We then went out and we were able to receive a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to build something called the Services Collaborative. So they took the foundation that was laid by that community of practice and they created across the life stages a common set of program standards, a common set of intake procedures and assessments, and started to work towards a common client tracking platform. And with that, including organizations like Family Services of Greater New Orleans, Cafe Reconcile, and others, we actually built for these 4 different stages of life how we really will measure ourselves, how we'll really start to understand if a youth-serving organization says that they're doing this work and they're reaching either the most at risk or they're reaching a particular population of young men and they're doing something. How do we really know that? And part of that work was in them be trusting enough, because we've worked with them now over the past couple years, to be a little vulnerable and say, we actually don't do this that well. To accept that there are things that some of them do very well. They might be best in class at doing that thing, but that they can't be all things to everybody. And understanding that a lot of these sort of informal referral networks that tend to exist between service providers really can be formalized in ways, and that there are things that they just are missing and not knowing that they can take advantage of. And so we're reaching the point now where about 8 organizations are piloting using those standards, using those common procedures and all of that. And one other place that we've been able to bring together one of these national movements is that in addition to the organizations that we are funding to use this client tracking system, we were able to partner with our local Opportunity Youth Collaborative. So then 10 of the organizations that they're funding are also on this same client tracking system. And we hope that the pilot participants then will be in the next round of organizations that are added to that. So little by little, we're taking organizations that were doing their own thing, maybe doing it very well, but in some ways not realizing the full benefit of everything that was out there, and thus not providing as much as they could be to the young men that we're all trying to serve. And so that's one example of us as the city recognizing that we won't be here. The city of New Orleans just hasn't historically funded social services to this level. And so we probably won't be able to create new pools of funding to do this. But what we can do is try to make sure that the people doing this work are working together as well as they can, and make them aware of all of the funds that are out there that they can bring together, work in concert, and achieve even more impact. Thank you.
Thank you one more time for our speakers. I'm sure people appreciate hearing a little nuance from Alliance members and collaboration of funders, and also the very intentional allocation of resources. I'm sure many folks in this room appreciate it. So we want to just update you guys. Remember, the working sessions begin promptly at 1:30 to 3. Please continue to engage on social media. And at 3:30, we'll be back in this room. Everyone loved the TED-style talks. We have our own version of that. We're going to have some very dynamic speakers in a TED-style forum that will come up and give you guys a few things to think about. And that revolves around what 2016 will look like in terms of winning for black boys and young men of color. Don't forget, though, it's critical for our feedback to go to the app and rate the sessions. We really want to make sure that next year and the following year, we continue to build on the successes of what works and what you guys really appreciated. So again, continue your desserts, and we look forward to seeing you again in this room at 3:30. Thank you very much.